All right. We're going to get to the news now because there's a lot to talk about. Okay. There's a lot to talk about. Obviously, we're going to start off with the Supreme Court of the United States, which once again came out with a decision, this time 7-2, not unanimous, because, you know, that's also concerning in and of itself, demanding the halting of deportations of Venezuelan migrants in Texas. Now, will the Trump administration follow through on this order? What the language looks like within the order. These are things that matter. Now, the reason why I say that is because the previous unanimous decision, the Trump administration used as an opportunity to test the waters of I guess, legalese, saying, well, these guys did not want effectuation, they want facilitation. And if the demand from the Supreme Court is facilitation, we can kind of start the process of facilitation without actually facilitating the return of anyone that is falsely deported. So we'll see. We'll see what happens, but let's take a look for this new decision, and I'll talk about the old decisions as well.
Overnight in the immigration battle, the Supreme Court acting on an emergency appeal from the ACLU involving potential new deportation efforts. Our senior White House correspondent, Selena Wang, is live for us in Washington with the latest now. Good morning, Selena.
Hey, good morning, Gio. The Trump administration's battle with the courts is rapidly escalating. The Supreme Court is again weighing in on their deportation plans as Senator Chris Van Hollen fights for the release of a man who was mistakenly deported to that notorious prison in El Salvador.
Overnight, in a temporary move, the Supreme Court blocking the deportation of Venezuelan migrants held in Texas under the Alien Enemies Act, a centuries-old law that provides little to no due process. The court ruling on an emergency appeal from the ACLU, directing the administration to pause the deportations until further order of this court. The ACLU saying they're relieved and that these men were in imminent danger of spending their lives in a horrific foreign prison without ever having had the chance to go to court. This comes amid the showdown over Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a migrant who was mistakenly deported to the infamous Secot prison in El Salvador. Senator Chris Van Hollen arriving back in the U.S., recounting their face-to-face meeting.
He was traumatized by being at Secot and fearful of many of the prisoners in other cell blocks.
Van Hollen says Salvadoran officials gave
Dude, the stuff that the right wing, the stuff that the right wing administration and right wing influencers have been doing surrounding this story, unironically resembles like the shit stirring and the smear, the smear campaigns that like online lolcows engage in. It is kind of wild experiencing that as someone who both covers the news and has a more professional understanding of critical media analysis, and as someone who also routinely is the target of this like bottom of the barrel type like smear campaigns that initially were focused on, I don't know, random dark corners of the internet, like anonymous forums like on 4chan or the doxing forum, which I will not name. And now, because of Twitter, because of the Twitter purchase by Elon Musk and the 4chanification of Twitter, that has totally made the American government behave in the exact same way. There are photoshopped images, for example. It's kind of crazy that the Nayib Bukele administration in El Salvador and the MAGA movement across the board is engaging in some of the craziest ways to just lie actively. This is the hand of the man that the Democrats should feel should be brought back to the United States because he's such a fine and innocent person. They said he's not a member of MS-13, even though he's got MS-13 tattooed on his knuckles. And two highly respected courts found that he was a member of MS-13, beat up his wife, etc. I was elected to take bad people out of the United States, among other things. I must be allowed to do my job, make America great again. This right here is so insane. because like this is the worst, the fakest, most ridiculous Photoshop I have ever seen. I think they're trying to not say his fingers have MS-13 on it. They're trying to say that these images correspond to MS-13. Okay, but what's interesting about this is I don't even know if he has these finger tattoos. That's number one. And number two, they were so not MS-13 that not a single one of these tattoos were dinged initially. Not a single one of these tattoos was initially brought up in the first police report or the subsequent deportation reports. Because ICE fills a report to be like, these are the tattoos that we found on them to consider to be MS-13. And it's also wild because, yeah, this is New York Post runs an article suggesting the tattoos of Abrigo's hands are a sign of MS-13 affiliation, using a tweet from Captive Dreamer, an actual Nazi, as a source. This is Jesse Singal criticizing it. Libs are even freaking the fuck out about this. Right-wing liberals are freaking the fuck out about this. Bill Kristol is writing about how insane this is. Like, in the previous Trump administration, you had liberals be like, we got to abolish ICE. Second Trump administration, you have liberals writing articles about assassinating high-profile politicians, and you have Bill Kristol talking about the abolition of ICE. I don't know where we go from here, but I am at least a little bit glad that like even the most right-wing neocon reactionary freaks that still have some semblance of like institutions and the defense of institutions are recognizing that there is a need for change. This doesn't mean that all of these guys are genuine. This does not mean that these people are your allies right now, or they will remain your allies. But the reality of the matter is, I think there is a change in the overall vibes and the overall attitudes from the American public. I'm hearing like the very fact that, you know, I can't wait till it happens or someone should do it. Like statements like that, vague statements like that are being pushed out openly on the fucking timeline by liberals, okay? These are not like radical extremist. These are not radical extremist leftists saying this kind of stuff. It's actually your moms and your dads. It's like accountants, nurses, teachers, people that are people that you would never expect to say things like this. It is truly a wild time. And I think that the Democratic Party, of course, is not seizing on the moment and the anger and resentment, but I will say this has been my greatest moment of vindication, for the record. As Waifu Jenner Brent Mao says, you were saying a few weeks ago that normies don't know about the deportation regime. Has the Kilmar case changed that? Yes. What did I tell you? This is not even just like my moment of vindication for the past year. This is my moment of vindication for the past decade. I always have stressed the importance of Democratic politicians actively making a bigger deal about some of the awful things that the Trump administration or any administration is doing about migrants will inevitably cause media coverage around the atrocities, and that will inevitably cause the American public to very quickly turn around and go, this is unacceptable. I've been saying this. I've been saying this for years. I said this in the Biden administration, in the beginning of the Biden administration, where I openly stated early on, April or February of 2021, when the Biden administration was using Customs and Border Patrol to, whip Haitian asylum seekers at the border, I was saying they cannot do this. They have to abide by the campaign promises that they made the first 100 days of immigration, like actively trying to create pathways towards amnesty. And if they don't do that, and if they cave and capitulate the right-wing framing on this issue, which I expected they were going to do, which they of course did, that the entire conversation would flip to the right and Americans would become incredibly reactionary on the issue of immigration, which happened. And in that time, in that exact time frame, I kept repeating over and over again, this is dangerous. This is very dangerous, both because this administration, the Trump administration, if they come into power, will actively seize on the right-wing white nativist sentiment and will do a cruel deportations regime. And if the liberals don't actually push back and don't counter message around this issue, Americans will be asleep. And for the first couple of months, Americans were indeed asleep. But the Kilmar Abrego situation changed that discourse. Why? Because the admin, due to one immigration attorney of the federal government and his moment of honesty, his brief moment of recognition and honesty, which he was subsequently fired over, okay, where they admitted that they had made a mistake in deporting Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Maryland resident, to El Salvador, despite previous court orders not to deport this man to El Salvador. They made a mistake and they admitted that mistake, and that all of a sudden was a pivotal moment where people started focusing on this issue. And then Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, as I said, as I supported over and over again, actively pushed the issue and put his body on the line, flew directly down to El Salvador, and this became an even larger issue of note. It became an even more worthwhile issue. More media coverage around it, more attention being put on the Trump administration's erosion of due process, more focus around deportations and unjustifiable deportations in general. And this, in and of itself, is the reason as to why the El Salvador admin had to back away and get Chris Van Hollen, the Maryland senator, to visit Kilmar. I'm telling you right now, no, they didn't admit they were wrong. One of their lawyers did and was promptly fired for doing so. No, what do you mean? That's what I said. The administration's attorney accidentally, in a moment of honesty, admitted to a mistake. That was enough. That was the pivotal point. Do you understand? For years and years, I have been screaming from the mountaintops about Democrats doing exactly what Van Hollen should have been doing, okay? Or what Van Hollen has done. Make this an issue that people have to pay attention to. And the first moment that they seized on that opportunity, we are seeing changes occur. Do you understand? This is why I always stress the importance. This is why I always stress the importance of working with the allies we have that are in positions of power. Because Senator Chris Van Hollen is not, one of my favorite senators at all. He is not close to me ideologically at all. But he did the right thing in the right moment. He actually moved beyond platitudes. Okay? He moved beyond platitudes. And he forced people to pay attention. Because when you're a senator, you have this power. You have a bully pulpit, maybe not as vast and as large and as influential as the presidential one, but you still have a soapbox that you can utilize like this, especially if you personally go out there. Now, this doesn't mean that magically the situation will improve overnight. That's not what I'm saying at all. Okay? This is not going to magically change the deportation regime. And as I have said, they are actively, the Trump administration is actively moving to disparage Manuel Kilmar Garcia, sorry, in more dramatic ways, in more ridiculous ways. But this is a pivotal moment. This is a attitude shift. Trust me when I say this. Okay? Trust me when I say this. It's just beginning. And more people within the margins are going to, more and more people within the margins are going to change their perspective on this issue. They're going to come out and speak out against this. I promise. Especially since, where is it? This very moment right here is a pivotal one because it shows everyone that has been protesting that your anger and your protests do matter, that Democrats taking a principled stance matters. As I've said, they want to make SCOTUS a place where dissidents disappear without due process. We cannot let this happen. This is the first small battle in a much larger fight. Okay?